This week on Ridiculously Bored.
I heard that your wife did not like you when she first met you.
Yes, that's true. Every once in a while, you'd see a log of floating by, like somebody took a dump in the water, and it was like
Caddyshack.
Oh, so bad.
She's like, I was basically being nice to some loser from America who had no other friends.
Hello there. My name is David Michael.
And I'm Michael Carter.
And we are
Ridiculously bored.
All right, we're back. Episode 13. We had a little bit of a departure last week. We had a special guest, so we did something a little bit different. Didn't keep with the normal cadence that we usually do, but we're back and ready to hit it up again. How are you doing, Michael?
Good. Let's talk about the week. So, did you watch the Super Bowl?
I did watch the Super Bowl. I did. I enjoyed it. I am an AFC East Miami Dolphins fan, so I never was a Tom Brady fan. However, it's hard to root against the GOATs, and it's definitely hard to root against him when the entire Patriot Nation despises the fact that he's in the Super Bowl again with half a team of former New England Patriots.
So it's funny because I don't necessarily. I'm not a Patriots fan, right? I'm a Giants fan, but I joke that Giants really have nothing to worry about the Patriots because each time in the Super Bowl they beat them. But the issue is, like, even if you're not a fan of him or the teams he's played on, like, you have to respect what he's done, right? Yeah. That's the big thing, right? 7 out of 10. First of all, the number 10 is ridiculous, but winning actually 7 out of them, it's crazy.
Well, the statistic that just blows my mind is he's played 20 seasons. Half of those seasons, 10 of them, he's played in the Super Bowl. I mean, like, it's 50% on the Super Bowl, which is, ask anyone, ask Dan Marino, ask, any of the legendary quarterbacks how hard it is to get to the Super Bowl, let alone win it. And he's done it in half of the seasons that he's played, and he's not done.
So my favorite stat was, if you're a betting man, you got better chance of Tom Brady making the Super Bowl than Steph Curry, who is the greatest three-pointer shooter ever, of him making a three. Like, how crazy is that stat?
That's crazy.
Because his percentage is in the 40s.
I saw a really good meme last week, too. It said Dallas Cowboys number of NFC West or number of NFC championships since 2001, 0. Tom Brady, number of NFC championships since 2001, 1. Number of years Tom Brady was in the NFC, 1.
That's great. I hate Dallas. Which leads me to actually it's not actually a technical correction, but we ripped half of the country last week.
Oh, we did. So oh, man.
We'd like to welcome back those listeners, hopefully, from all the different places.
We'd like to apologize to the people of Florida, Sacramento, Phoenix, Boston,
Philly, San Antonio, DC.
San Antonio.
Yeah, last week was a rough week for the U.S.
My favorite line of last week was you going, the bars suck, the people sucked, fuck you, Philly. I'm like, that was so random and so uncalled for.
Listen to episode 12 if anybody's interested in the rest of the story.
And then you proceeded to go, we had the best time of our life. All we had to do was make a right instead of a left.
Yes. So, as you said, episode 13, Marino was number 13. I know you have affinity for him and his number.
I do.
It's weird. In the U.S., 13 is considered an unlucky number.
Yeah.
But Italians actually consider it a lucky number.
And I'm Italian, so
it's weird. Yeah.
So therefore, I think it works. Isn't the number 7, which is typically in Vegas, like a lucky number? Isn't it an unlucky number for like Asians?
4 is unlucky number because I guess it sounds like death.
Oh.
3 and 8 are extremely lucky numbers because it sounds like money and wealth. So much so that, like, if you go into a building in China or Hong Kong, where I've been with my wife, they don't have 4th floors. So it's 1, 2, 3, 5.
Well, ironically, in the U.S., particularly in New York, a lot of high-rise, a lot of those buildings in Manhattan, they don't have a 13th floor. They go straight from 12 to 14.
Yes.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. And every once in a while, you see that on a plane too. I like the fact that my pilot is superstitious. That bothers me a little. Right? 'Cause hopefully the guy's not using black magic to fly this plane. He's actually using science and technology. But I mean,
people
sure.
get so weird about planes too, and like luck is going to save you in the event of some tragedy. One of my favorite quotes from a comedian, and I forgive me for not remembering who said this, but it had to be like Chris Rock or Eddie Murphy or one of those guys. But they're in a plane and they're like, look, I'm not worried about whether or not it's my time to go. I'm worried about whether it's the motherfucker sitting next to me.
Or the pilots. So how was your week other than the Super Bowl?
Week was crazy. Couple things that happened this week. Bought a new car, which, as you may well know, I absolutely hate the car buying experience because I get myself all worked up before I even get onto the lot, because I know I'm preparing myself for the back and forth that is car buying in America. And
the lying convention that is called car buying.
Yeah. And I just it's the gamesmanship, the one-upsmanship. I just hate it's the game, okay, all right, let me go talk to my manager. And then why don't you stay here and give me your keys and we'll look at your trade-in. And then they hold on to your keys so you can't walk off the lot. And then, oh yeah, all right, well, what if we come down 200 instead of 400 or this? Or let me go talk to my manager again. And damn well the dude's in the back like filing his nails or something. It's just a stupid game that
He's in the back putting your keys down his pants.
Yeah. Let's see, episodes 9, 10, 11, and 12.
1 through 12, 13 onwards. You could see any of those.
I just don't like the whole game that is car buying. But this experience was actually kind of funny because it kind of went in with I'd done all the research and I went in with a number in my mind, and the first number they came back with was just not even close. So I'm like, look, just give me my keys. That's not even, we're not going to get there in the next hour or two. So,
right.
Cause you're so far off. And he's like, well, what number do you want to see? And I said, look, out the door, this is the price that I'm willing to pay. And he's like, all right, well, I don't think I can do that, but I'll go ask. So he goes in, he comes back in like 30 seconds. He's like, all right, it's your lucky day. Like, we can do it.
Yeah.
And then in my mind, I'm like, shit, I should have asked for more.
Yeah. And did he say to you, I'm losing money on this deal? Because that's the one that really gets me when they say that at the end. Just so you know,
he didn't, but the manager, when he came back with the number and I realized that it was that easy, I kind of asked for more. And what they ended up doing was they ended up giving me a lot more for my trade-in in order to make it a better deal for me, which fine. However you want to crunch the numbers, you do it. But as long as this is the number that I walk out the door with, and I got it and then some, and I was very happy with it. But yeah, the manager came out and he's like, you're lucky it's my first day on the job, dude, because there's no way I'm giving away this car for this amount of money to anybody else.
Yeah, see, that's like, the stuff that annoys
I know
the
the game, dude. Like, you don't have to play the bullshit with me.
Yeah. So I'll tell you 3 quick stories about car deals. One, in this COVID environment, my wife and I last year, we actually got 2 new cars. Her car was up, my car was up. And so the second car was in the dead of COVID. So that one was even easier to like call dealerships and be like, hey, look, I'm looking to buy this car. This is exactly what I want. What price can you give me? If you do that in a normal environment, some of them push back. Yeah. But in COVID, they know you can't go in. So all of them were giving me prices. So I got to a point where I got what I considered the best price I possibly could. And then I went to the local dealer near me and I'd met him once. So I sent him an email and I said, look, this is what I'm looking to do. And I marked off like another $500 off the price. And I said to him, I said, look, just be respectful of mine and your time. If you can't do it, just tell me. I'm fine with it, but just tell me. So he's like, no, we can do it. And so that was probably one of the easier experiences I've had. I did all my research, did all the, Edmunds and the Blue Book and all that kind of shit before I went in. So I got what I wanted. My car before that, I went to a dealership. And like you, I think the guy was relatively new, like this manager saying, oh, my first day. I thought I got an amazing deal. So much so, the guy got fired the next day. So I think he actually really did do something wrong, because I went back about 2 weeks later at that time. This is about 3 years ago, when now my wife's car was expiring too. So I went back and I said, hey, look, I don't feel like doing all this research shit again. Why don't you just give me another car for the same price I just paid for this one? And they're like, well, that dealer is no longer here. We fired him, and we're not only can we not meet that, but if we were to give you the same car right now, it's $100 more a month. Oh, and I'm like, well, that's crazy. So I think that guy actually fucked up.
That's good.
Third one was me and this guy were negotiating hardcore on a lease. And I don't remember the dollar amount that it was what I was looking for. But as an example, he came to me and he was like, look, absolute best price. I know you wanted better. And I always used to say, like, if I thought the car should be $500, I would be like, you got to give it to me for $480 a month. And then we'd fight a little bit, and sometimes they'd come in around $500, a couple dollars less, a couple dollars more, but it got us to that point. So I knew they were really doing the best they could in this deal, even though they were still lying to me. Guy comes back finally on a 3-year lease, and he's like, I can do it for $500 a month. So I said, okay, you need to go back and get it for $499 a month. And he's like, what? I said, yeah. I need to feel I've won this negotiation. You now need to go back and get it for $499 a month. So he's like, I'm pretty sure they'll do that. He's like, but let me go ask. So he came back and he was like, yeah, they said yes. So literally, I got that $1 off.
Yeah, do you know that the most profitable person in the entire dealership is the F&I person? As soon as you do the deal and you sign off and you say, yeah, we have a deal, and they send you back to the finance office, that person is profit-wise the most profitable person, because they're the one that tries to upsell you on the warranties.
Yes.
And hey, we got clear coat, and we can get this, this extra warranty that covers any nicks and scratches on a lease, so that when you return the car, you don't owe us anything, and all that stuff. That person is the most profitable person in the dealership.
That doesn't surprise me, because they always have a story. So my guy said to me on a lease, both of our new cars are financed to own. On the last couple, we've always leased them. And the guy said to me, look, you have leather seats, but for $300, we can put this special protection on it that the color won't fade. And I'm like, that really sounds like your problem, not mine. I go, because in 3 years, the color's not going to fade. So the guy's like, yeah, well, we prefer that people get it because it does hold the value of the car. I said, and that sounds like something you should be throwing in then. I said, you can tell me if you want to throw it in or not, but I'm not paying for it.
Yeah. So we ended up, the guy's trying to upsell me on an extended warranty, which I had decided beforehand that I didn't want. And surprisingly, it was a lot cheaper. Usually they're like, at least, three or, maybe between $1,500 and $3,000 for an extended warranty. And I'm just like, no, dude, no. And he just keeps coming back and I'm like, dude, you're wasting your time and you're wasting my time. And he's like, all right, what if I knock another $500 off the price of the car? And I'm like, how about you do that anyways?
And keep your fucking warranty.
and then he's like, all right. And then he takes $500 off the price of the car. And I'm like, great. Oh, okay. And then he's like, and here's the new price of the warranty. And he goes, I'm like, all right, I'm going to buy the warranty now. Because now it's like, now I can't afford not to take it, because he's taking like $1,000 off the price between the price off the car and the price off the warranty. And I'm like, fine.
It doesn't surprise, I never thought about it, but it doesn't surprise me that you mentioned that, because that person sitting there is truly just upselling you shit.
And it's all profit, right? Warranties rarely ever get used. And when they do get used, it's, it's not, there's rarely a hard cost to it, right? It's usually labor that is where the hard cost to a warranty is. Parts, yeah, there's a cost to parts, but let's be realistic. They're buying all that shit from China anyways. So, I mean, it's at a heavily discounted price. They're buying at such a great volume.
Where I bought my wife. So let me tell you a story. This week we got pounded with snow here. We're up to about, in 7 days, we're up to about 3 feet of snow that we've gotten.
Wow, that's crazy.
So it's a lot. And over a day it was 18, 20 inches. Then the next day was another 5 or 6. And then over the weekend we got a few more. So it's just been coming on left and right. And we went outside and we've as we were younger, we only had sleds, right? Not to mention, we also usually had the metal sleds, which, by the way, I still have one in my garage. When my parents sold the house, That was my like one souvenir from the old house. I'm like, I'm gonna take this.
Was it
sled.
one of like the round ones, or is it one of like the radio
No,
flyer ones?
yeah, it's the radio flyer.
Yeah.
It's not like a flying saucer. It's a radio flyer. Rusted the shit out of it, but like I still have it in my garage. So we've upgraded to inner tubes, right? One of my cousins mentioned to me, and I was like, you know what? There's a great fucking idea. We have a great hill in the backyard. We got inner tubes. So you go fast on them, right? And if you're not paying attention, all of a sudden you're 2 towns away. Like that's how much speed you could pick up on them. And my daughter was standing behind me, and I didn't know she was that close. And I kind of fell into the inner tube and headbutted her full force on her face.
Oh, jeez.
And she tried not to cry. She was pretty good about it to start. And then the tears started coming, and I felt absolutely horrible. So that was my week. I actually headbutted my daughter.
Well, that's kind of crazy. The other thing that happened this week for me was I go over to my dad's, and he's been taking these eye drops. He's got to put two drops in the morning and 2 drops at night, 2 different medications for his, he's got glaucoma on both eyes.
Yeah,
so
the
I go
flavored
over
eye drops, as he told you.
I don't know what episode that was, but yeah, he did taste them at one point. And so I go over there this week, and he's like, somebody stole my eye drops. And I'm like, Dad, you got a TV, 40-inch TV right in front of the door. If anybody's going to steal anything, they're going to take your TV. They're not going to break into your apartment. Or
possibly they really did need the eye drops because they couldn't see the fucking TV on the wall.
The TV's not even on the wall. It's like sitting there on like a table. Like they could easily just unplug it, boot, and walk out with it. Anyways,
especially
I'm like,
the weight of these new
whatever.
TVs.
Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know what happened to your eye drops. He's like, yeah, somebody came and took them. So I spent the next half hour tearing his apartment apart, looking for the eye drops. Can't find the eye drops. I'm like, all right, I guess I gotta order new eye drops from the pharmacy. So that was the end of that. He calls me today and he's like, yeah, I found the eye drops. And I was like, where were they? I turned the entire apartment upside down. He said they were in the dishwasher. I said, you know what? That makes sense because that is the one place that I did not think to look was in the dishwasher.
And logically, it's understandable that you didn't.
Yeah. So I'm like, you must have put them in there, when you were cleaning stuff and maybe they fell in and you forgot it because they were sitting right on the counter right above the dishwasher. He's like, oh no, I didn't put them in there. Somebody came in and put them in the dishwasher. I'm like, duh. Who the fuck's gonna walk into your apartment, walk past the TV, walk into your kitchen, take the drops, put them in the dishwasher, close the door, and walk out and not take anything else?
How valuable does he think these eye drops are?
Well, they're probably the most expensive thing in his entire apartment because they're not cheap. But thankfully, he's got fairly good VA insurance, so they're covered. But yeah, it's just pretty funny. And then the only other thing we did, we took the RV out this weekend and went and stayed on our friend's property up north. So it's kind of fun that. We have some friends that have enough land where, you can bring an RV and park it. And it's not like a big deal. So it's kind of fun. They live like an hour north of us. So it's kind of fun that we can just go out there and, we can drink all night long and not have to worry about driving home. We just kind of stumble into the RV, shut the door and then go to bed and then drive home the next morning. So that's a use that I never really thought I would use the RV for. I thought I would always be like driving somewhere far away and then, camping for the weekend.
A mobile sobriety unit.
That's right.
So I got a question. Not being an RV guy, right? The little that I know about them is you usually go to some sort of campground, pull out the hose for the toilet, pull out the electricity, plug all that shit in. What do you do on a night like this where you're just staying at your friend's property that doesn't have all those type of connections?
Yeah, it's called either dry camping or boondocking. So the RV is essentially a self-contained unit. There's a freshwater tank. There's a gray water tank, which is think of like shower water and sink water. And then there's a black water tank, which is like the toilets, right? So, those tanks, they are what they are, right? So as long as you fill up the freshwater tank, you've got a fully functioning, unit that has running water and you can flush water and you can take showers if you have enough water. And then everything else just dumps into a tank and you just go dump it. The electricity is the only real problem, but it's, most RVs have a generator built in. It's a gas power generator. It actually is tied into the fuel tank of the vehicle. So you don't even need to fill it up separately. It'll actually take fuel from the actual fuel tank. So you run the generator for a few hours, it charges up all the batteries, and then the batteries can power just about everything in the RV, with the exception of like the AC unit, which takes just a ton of power. But if you're not using the AC, which we're not because it's winter, you could run the entirety of the RV with heat and everything for like 6 hours on one battery charge.
Yeah, that's not bad. Like I said, I have just no idea about any of that.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. So when you go to a hotel, and this has nothing to do with your RV, but it is a good segue. You go to a hotel because the towels get cleaned every day. You kind of use the towel, dry yourself off, throw it on the ground. They change it when they clean the room. At home, you tend not to do that every day, right? Towels usually use 2 or 3 days type thing, unless maybe you're sweating like an animal or something, but you use them for a couple days. Do you feel, and I'll answer my question in a second, but do you feel that a towel has a side?
I mean, technically a towel has 2 sides. I don't know about you, but when I use a towel, it's not like one side gets wet and the other side doesn't, right? I mean, towel's wet, it's wet on both sides. So no, not really.
All right. So I find this amazing. My wife keeps track of which side of the towel she uses for what. So one side of the towel she only uses for her hair. The other side of the towel she uses for her body. And then the way she puts it on the rack is so she knows like, oh, that inside one is the hair side or that inside one is the body side. So if let's say we're in the bathroom and she forgets to grab the towel before she gets in the shower, she asks me to grab it for her. And then she's like, you have to put it on the hook this way so I know which side is which. So it's one of those things. I have never given a thought to the towel having a side.
Does
I
she
use
know
it.
that
I wipe
she's
my body
married
off.
to you? Does she remember that she's married to you and that you would purposely go in there and swap sides of the towel just
every
to mess
once
with
in a
her?
while I say that to her and she's like, that's not funny. I'm like, yeah. She goes, last night I actually flipped the towel around on you and I didn't tell you. She's like, that's not funny.
I will tell her this. I do so when I use a towel, I do my hair and then I flip it and then I do my body. I never use the same side in one, kind of shower setting, right? But once I put it back on the rack, I don't know which side I used. Yeah. So
I don't think I even pay attention at all. I think I just use it. Like I don't even know if I'm flipping the towel around. I'm not paying attention to it.
I think in my mind, when I dry my hair off, there's hair falling out and getting onto that side, and I don't want that hair to get onto my body, which is still wet. So I turn it around and I use the other side for my body. I don't know. In my mind, it makes sense. It's probably stupid.
Yeah. That's why David wears a hat. See a previous episode if you're interested in that story. All of his hair is falling out all over the rest of his body.
My hair is not falling all out, but I'm sure in the next 20 years I'll go bald.
All right. So I found out something recently, and I thought it was rather interesting. And so I'd like to hear your version of the story because I just heard a brief version of it from your wife.
Oh, Jesus.
But I heard that your wife did not like you when she first met you.
Yes, that's true. So work David and play David are 2 completely diametrically opposed human beings. They don't even coexist in the same realm. At work, I am usually fairly straightforward and direct. I've been doing what I do for a very long time, so I'm very confident in my ability to do that job and to make the right decisions. So, and I'm also Italian from New York, so I'm not afraid to tell people how I think things should be done and why I'm right. And not why I think I'm right, why I'm right. So my wife and I, when we met, we had worked together, and I was in charge of all of IT and web development for an ad agency, and she was a client service account manager. So she would manage some of our clients. And typically we would work together in that she needed my team to do stuff for her clients And we had a method to the madness, and sometimes the account managers didn't always follow the method. She was actually pretty good, but some of her colleagues were pretty poor at it. And if they didn't, we had a process, and if they didn't follow the process, I wasn't afraid to tell people to their face or in front of other people why I felt like, it's their fault that that client's not gonna be happy with us because they didn't follow the process that we had established and agreed upon.
So how frequently do you think the term at work comes up of David and Dick in the same sentence?
I'm pretty sure most of the people on her team were not a fan of me when I had worked there. But again, I've been doing this for a long time, so and I was probably 10 or 15 years older than most of the people in that department. So it was an interesting dynamic. But I mean, it was one of those things where, yeah, I'm direct during the day, but as soon as 5 o'clock hits and it's happy hour time and we all go to the bar and we drink, I'm everybody's pal. You know what I mean? So I think once she got to know that side of me and she was like, oh, wow, he's really not that bad. I think I eventually won her over, but yeah.
And now she's back to thinking you're a dick. I'm kidding. So it's funny that you mentioned that work David and outside of work David, right? As I'm sure you know, GQ, mm-hmm. I won't talk to him at work. Like, he is such an asshole at work because he's all business all the time. Even if you have to call him for something, it's very rare that I'll call him during the day. And nowadays you don't really call much anyway. You just send him a text. But yeah, I won't talk to him during the day at work because I just think he's so different with how he responds and dealing with things, and it's just not worth it to me.
Yeah. Well, I totally believe that because I've never worked with him, but when he worked at the comic store that you also worked at and that I frequented quite often, he was a total dick to me. And I hated him. I mean, like, we hated each other. We could not tolerate each other for the first, 5 years that we knew each other. It wasn't until we hung out outside of the comic store that we actually developed a friendship and could get along.
Yeah. So I talked about when you first met your wife. I'll talk about with mine. So when I first landed in Australia, literally a week later, my wife came to drink of the week. Right? That's what the firm used to call it. Every week, a different manager would sponsor, and I don't remember if I've told this story before. They would sponsor about an hour's worth of alcohol.
So was she a friend of someone that you worked with?
She's a friend of a friend. So the intention of this hour of drinks was you go, you have a drink, you get to know the people you work with, you leave, and you had a drink, maybe 2 drinks. What it became was people going, I'm going to invite all my friends, and we're going to pound the shit out of this bar tab for an hour, get hammered, and take full advantage of this. And my wife being cheap, that was in her wheelhouse. So I met her through her friend. I met her a week after I got there. And then a couple weeks later, we went to a rugby game. She was there as well. And that's the first time I got to kind of talk to her a little bit more and stuff like that. So we hit it off well enough that I was like, and then she was talking about this fish market. There's a massive fish market in Sydney, right? They're on the water everywhere. It's a big deal. You go there, it's all this super fresh seafood that they serve, and you kind of eat outdoors. So we started talking about that, and she's like, oh yeah, I love that place. If you want to go one weekend, let me know. I'll meet you there. We'll go for it. So I was like, oh, great. So to me, I thought that's our first date. Right? We're going to go. We're like that's what it felt like to me. Like, it was a date. It was an invitation. It wasn't just a friendly passing because I didn't really know her that well. I thought it was kind of a date because like I said, we had hit it off well enough. I found out many years later, actually, that
it was not
what
I
thought was our first date. It was not a date. And it's funny because I would bring it up. And like, I couldn't understand. I'm like, well, I don't know why you didn't think it was a first date. And she's like, it was not a first date. She's like, I was basically being nice to some fucking loser from America who had no other friends. So yeah, but it was many years later that I actually found that out. And then what actually became our first date, truly our first date. And that one was extremely clear, was a date. Like, that was one of those,
you beat her into submission.
Yes. Like, are you going to cry? Are you going to cry? Please, no one report me to wife abuse. It was not literally beat her. So we finally set the plans to go out, and we go out to the movies. And she swears to this day that she didn't do it on purpose. I swear to this day that she did. there was a friend of hers there at the movie theater. And my view is that was like her escape plan if she wasn't having a good time. And she's like, no, it was a total coincidence, coincidence. She happened to be there. And it's not this far, but it would be like somebody from Boston showing up at a New York City movie theater. That's like, it was a good enough distance that it was surprising that other person was there.
Right.
So that's actually how I met my first wife and how our date, my wife and how our date started. So yeah.
Am I going to have to edit out the part where you called your wife cheap, or is that okay to stay in?
It depends on the day. She says it. She knows it. She says it once in a while, but every once in a while I'll say it once too many times, and she does not appreciate it.
All right,
so we'll see.
I got to ask the question because we've had this conversation before about how maybe your wife doesn't think you're as funny as you think you are. Does she watch the podcast every week?
In the beginning, I was asking her to watch it like for feedback. I'm like, hey, you know us really well, both of us. Give us pros, give us cons. Let us know what we're doing right. Let us know what we're not. And so the first couple she watched, and then she claimed that it felt like a job, like I was making it a job for her. So she listens to him, as in her words, when she feels like listening to him now.
Got it.
So she gets to him eventually, but it's not on the top of her list. It also doesn't help that, as with everybody right now in COVID and pandemic, she's not in the car a lot. In general, her commute to work's pretty short anyway. Mm-hmm. So she doesn't really have the time to listen to it a lot, nor do I really think she has the desire.
Again, she doesn't think we're as funny as we think we are or as entertaining.
No. And it goes back to, and this sounds so arrogant, so it's not meant this way. But again, I've said before, I think I'm funny. And I've had other people tell me they think I'm funny. I think she's around me so much that she's gotten just used to how I am. Mm-hmm. And so it's almost irrelevant to her. Like, right. Yeah, that's how you are. Just go over there. Like, I understand that's how you are. Just go over there. So
she tolerates you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. My wife listens too. I almost think she listens hoping that I'll slip up and tell some story that she hasn't heard before. But I'm pretty much an open book, so I don't think I really have any secrets.
Does your wife at all talk to you about how, like, hey, I know these stories, so it's not really new to me? Because that's why my wife's like, there's no real rush for me to listen to these. She's like, I've heard all these stories before. So,
you know what? One of the reasons why she enjoys the podcast is because a lot of times you and I tell stories. Like, I don't go around saying, here's all the stuff that Mike and I did when we were kids.
You should, but go ahead.
If a conversation comes up and it's relevant and I remember it, I'll be like, oh yeah, this happened when I was a kid. So a lot of the stories that she hears us talk about are new to her, just because it just either I didn't remember to tell her, or it never, an opportunity never came up. I'm not just, out there forcing people to listen to my stories.
Yeah. And like you said, I think that's the other thing is even now, like over these last 12, 13 episodes, we'll tell a story and that reminds us of something else. And I'm like, wow, I haven't fucking thought about that in 20 years, like at all.
Yeah. Like
let alone told my wife about it.
The egg story. I don't remember how we got onto it, but I hadn't thought about that, probably because I tried to block it out of my memory because it was so traumatic, but I hadn't thought about that in years. Yeah. So when it came up, that wasn't something that I've ever really told my wife or my kids or anything like that. So they were like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that and got caught.
Yeah. My son lately has been trying to listen to the podcast. He's been asking me about him. What's the site, things like that. And I'm like, I think he's still too young for it. Yeah. I'm trying to avoid it. But look, he has his own account. He has his own YouTube. He has his own iPhone. If he wants to start downloading stuff, there's nothing I'll be able to do about it. But
I think my daughter gets a kick out of it. Because she's older, she's almost 20. I think my son's embarrassed by it. I think he's like, oh God, you're so cringy.
So what is the drink of the week this week?
Well, I am not feeling on my top game. So I've actually had a headache and have been nauseous most of the day and I'm exhausted. So I don't think it's the Rona, but, I am not drinking alcohol tonight. I am drinking a red edition Red Bull, which is watermelon flavor, which if you've ever had a watermelon Jolly Rancher, That's exactly what the Red Bull Red Edition tastes like. So it's actually pretty damn good.
So now that clearly you got COVID, do you believe it's real?
I've always believed it's real. The last couple of funerals I've gone to have showed me that it's real.
Mountain Dew has a red version now also that is watermelon flavored as well. I had it this weekend for the first time.
The problem
really weird
that I have with Mountain Dew is I only drink diet soda. Regular soda is just too sweet for me, which is ironic because I'm drinking here a regular, basically energy drink. But I can't do. They don't come out with diet versions of all these like crazy Mountain Dew flavors. And I love Mountain Dew. Diet Mountain Dew is one of my favorite, sodas. But they'll come out with like a Live Wire Crush or something like that. That's like orange flavored Mountain Dew. And I'm like, that's awesome. I would love that. I'm not drinking it unless it's diet though. And they never come out with a diet version. So
you'll be happy to hear this. The watermelon one is Mountain Dew Zero.
Oh, really?
So it actually is a diet.
So that I would actually try then. We'll see. We'll have to check it out.
So a few episodes ago, and obviously with Hot Chocolate being on last week, it kind of threw off the schedule a little bit. So I don't remember what episode we talked about it. But we had talked somewhere along the way about a Disney trip or something like that. And you said, as almost a throwaway, I almost drowned in Disney. I'll talk about that someday. What happened in Disney?
I meant to talk about it that episode, and then we just got carried away and it never came back up. So I forgot about it. So my recollection is a little bit fuzzy. So most of what I remember, because I was like, I don't know, like maybe 6 or 7 years old, maybe 8 years old at the most. We had gone down to Disney World in Florida from New York with some family friends. And I remember us staying at a hotel, and apparently I wasn't old enough to know how to swim. We didn't, have a pool, so I didn't really have the opportunity to learn how to swim. And I remember being at a hotel and being unsupervised out by the hotel pool. And I also remember looking into the water and seeing what I thought was a $20 bill or some dollar bill at the bottom of the water. So I think I went to reach for it and then just fell in and went straight to the bottom. And apparently one of the guys that was, the husband of the family that we were with happened to be walking by right at that moment and then reached in or jumped in and grabbed me and got me out. So, but the way I think they were overselling it a little bit. The way they were saying it was like, I almost died. In my mind, you screwed up my only opportunity to get money from the bottom of the pool because that was the end of it. They pulled me out and then dragged me away. And I'm like, no. But yeah, apparently that was the story. I mean, I remember looking into water and I remember seeing what I thought was money at the bottom of the pool. And then, I fell in and somebody came and got me.
Greed will kill you. So my story related to water and an amusement park is a little bit different. No, there's no risk of drowning here. I'll start there. I'll get that out of the way. But as I've mentioned before, my parents don't find me funny. You're not going to talk
about golden showers again, are you?
No.
Okay, good.
No. Tune in next week. No, I'm kidding. As I've mentioned before, my parents don't find me funny. They're also not big jokers either. Like it's actually funny now as an adult. Sometimes my dad will tell stories that are like pretty funny, and I'm like, where was this when I was a kid?
So you called them a racist in front of one of your best friends. What would make you possibly think that they would ever find you funny?
Check episode 12 for that story. So we went to Canada. We used to go, as I mentioned before, whenever we did the vacations was always to see family somewhere. And we went to Canada. And while we were there, we went to their version of Great Adventure. I don't remember what it was called. It's like Dream World or Ocean World or something like that. And there's a part where as soon as you get in, there was like a fountain. And everybody would sit around it, like kind of while you were getting everything ready, regrouping, planning. And start of the day, I was sitting on that. And my dad just walked by and pushed me into it. And it wasn't a water park. It was like regular rides and roller coasters and stuff. And he just pushed me into it. So, and like that, like again, looking back on it, that's really funny. That is so out of character for my dad. So, and it wasn't because I was being a wise ass and he wanted to push me into the water. He just walked by, thought it would be funny, and he did it. So that was my version of a water story, which didn't involve trying to find a 20.
Yeah. I remember growing up, we used to go to, was it Saxon Woods
Hmm.
And then Sprain Ridge, there was two like community pools that were huge that we would always go to. But they were like absolutely disgusting. Like every once in a while you'd see a log of shit floating by. Like somebody took a dump in the water and it was like,
Like Caddyshack.
yeah, it was so bad.
Yeah. We went maybe 10 or 15 years ago. My nephew was up from, he spent the summer up here one year. So maybe 12 years ago. And my dad wanted to take him to a pool. So we went to Saxon Woods, and I hadn't been there since we were kids. And the place was like so trashy. And one thing I remember, which is pretty funny, was there was a lady there who was dressed as if she was in the Riviera. She had on like the big gold earrings, the gold sunglasses, like a really, really tight bathing suit where it's jammed in her ass. And I'm like, what's going on here? Like, this is a community pool near White Plains, New York. What does she think is happening here? So that's the last time I was at Saxon Woods, and I really have no reason to go there anymore.
I don't remember I remember being excited to go there at the time when we were younger because it was, like a car ride and we would get out of the neighborhood, but I just remember it being absolutely disgusting. All right. One of the questions that I've been meaning to ask you, because we always end up on the conversation of, or the topic of, ex-girlfriends and whatnot. One of the things I've been meaning to ask you is how far would you go to get revenge on an ex-girlfriend? And this isn't the one crazy question. I'm bringing this up because a friend of mine told me this story and I have to tell it, but I'm curious to know how far you would go.
How far I would go is different than how far I've gone. Like, I haven't done anything crazy to any ex-girlfriends, right? Like, the worst thing is probably friend them on Facebook just so I can see what's going on. Like, that's it. I haven't done anything crazy. How far would I go? I have no idea. Like, there was never... Here's the thing. It's also one of the reasons why I think partly why my relationships tended to be about 6 months at a time. A few factors. One, I think I was myself from the beginning, and I think the girls got a little bit more comfortable and started changing, and then molding into what they were going to be, and I didn't like that new version. But I had never felt like when I was dating someone, most people was if like, oh, this girl leaves me tomorrow, I'm going to be so upset. I was like, okay, bye. Like I'll find somebody else. I'll move on to the next one type thing. So I haven't done anything crazy. Have you done anything crazy before you tell this friend story?
No. Again, I mean, I'm friends with most of my exes. We've never even, the worst breakups always ended up being friends. So I've never been in a contentious situation where I don't think I would ever just like, want to get revenge on anyone. But a buddy of mine was dating this girl, and he's older, empty nester, recently divorced, and kind of re-entering the dating world. And I have a couple of friends that are like this, and I absolutely love them because dating right now, from what I gather, is fucking nuts. Absolutely batshit crazy fucking nuts. Like with all the technology. Go ahead.
Yeah, and you're adding in somebody. So I don't know this person, but just the couple pieces you've said. Empty nester, which means they're a little older.
Uh-huh.
Recently divorced, which means odds are they were married at least 20 something years. So they could have been married before like email was a thing, right? That's one.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Let alone cell phones and the way we can text nowadays and pictures and stuff like that.
And that's where I'm going with this. The dating world has changed so drastically different. But at least for guys, I don't know about for women, I can't speak to that, but at least for guys, in a good way, in that, the traditional thing to do if you were a guy was you had to, go to a bar or go somewhere and meet people and then make the first move. And, you had to kind of like get yourself gamed up to go out and, win the prize, right? Which, would be hopefully someone that you can date and fall in love with. Nowadays, between like Tinder and all these apps and stuff, I mean, for a while, he was just like dating a new girl every week, and every one of them he would show me, and I'm like, okay, yeah, she looks like a model. She looks like a model. Like, great on you. Like you're doing fantastic. Whatever you're doing, keep it up, right? Anyways, he ends up dating this one chick, And, you know, they have a very, very, very passionate relationship. I'll leave it at that. Okay. They were going nuts for the longest time and enjoying each other's company all day long, every day. And, you know, someone that's older, he's older than I am. So, I mean, so when you hear that, you're like, all right, you know, this, if, you know, if I end up unfortunately getting divorced again, and then there's hope for the rest of us, right? You know?
Right.
So anyway, so he's telling me all this crazy shit, and I'm like, wow, that's like, you're doing shit that I don't think I ever did when I was like 16, you know? And so anyways, they have this and she is a multi-millionaire, right? Self-made, has her own business, and has a, you know, this mansion of a house that he was basically living at for, you know, the time while they were dating. And but she also had some control issues. So, you know, he wasn't allowed to go out with his friends, and, you know, she had to look at his phone and know like everything that he was doing and who he was texting with and stuff like that. And he's telling me this, and while it's going on, and I'm like, dude, you're going down a path. Like, I don't see it ending well, because, you know, worst case scenario, you guys break up and it's a really nasty breakup. Like, best case scenario, you end up married and you're a prisoner in your own relationship because she has all the control, right? So, and I'm just looking at from the outsider in, I'm like, dude, this is not going to end well. Anyways, it doesn't end well. They get into this massive, you know, fight and, you know, whatever, and she basically like blocks him, and she has, you know, I think it even like authorities were involved at some point in time, so it got really bad. And, you know, she's got money, so like, you know, spending money to rectify the situation wasn't, you know, outside of her realm of possibilities. But before they had broken up, she had taken him to a car dealership, and she was looking at buying a totally like shredded, fully maxed like Ford. I don't know if it was a Raptor, but, you know, basically a completely tricked out truck. Right. And she didn't catch me as kind of a truck person. So I think she was kind of buying it as a carrot for him to kind of keep him around, because he, you know, he would have this $90,000 truck that, you know, he'd be a part of the relationship with. Right. So anyways, they break up, and, you know, apparently she was still going to buy that truck, and, you know, it would have been for the next guy probably. Right. So the minute they break up, he goes to the car dealership and he's like, I want that fucking truck. And I'm like, dude, like, he's telling me about this truck. I'm like, don't buy that. I mean, it's a house payment, right? I'm like, don't, just to get even at somebody. He's like, yeah, I know. It's just not the smartest thing to do. And yeah, you're probably right. You know, we get off the phone, he hangs up. Next morning, he's like, dude, I bought the truck. It's fucking awesome. I'm like, wait a minute. You bought the truck that you kind of didn't want, but you wanted because you knew that she would be pissed off if you bought the truck, because you knew she was going to buy the truck after you broke up with her. He's like, oh, I got the truck and it feels so good.
How does it feel to sleep in now that he's lost everything else?
You know, there's that saying, you can't drive your house, but you can sleep in your car.
So she's now rich, single, and pretty.
Yeah,
right?
she was attractive.
Send me her info later.
See, this is why your wife shouldn't be watching the show.
I'll tell her to skip this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, like, I don't get it. Like, I can understand, like, see, I can understand him being like, oh, geez, I really wish I got that truck. Mm-hmm. And I really liked it, and it would have been nice. And if I stayed with her, I would have been able to drive it. But yeah, it's just, that's getting caught up in the heat of the moment, right? And even after it's over.
Yeah, I've asked him recently, and this was a couple months ago. I've asked him recently, like, hey, how do you feel about the truck now? Yeah. He's like, oh yeah, it's great. You know, I don't drive it that much, but, you know, it's awesome. I still like it. I'm like, all right.
That's better. He's like, I'm using the truck to plant monoliths out in the desert. I'm kidding.
See episode 1 or 2 for that one.
Yeah. All right. So the one crazy question this week, that's your one crazy friend. This is the one crazy question. Would you rather save 100 people, but nobody knew you did it? Or would you rather be in a position to save no one, but everybody thinks you saved 100 people?
And the answer for me is easy. I'd rather save 100 people. I don't understand the other end of it though. Why? I guess if you have an ego, like you want people to think that you saved a bunch of people and you want to be a hero. But no, I would rather save 100 people and not be known about it.
The answer I feel I should give on this podcast is similar. I feel like I should say I want to save 100 people and I don't care if anybody knows. But if I save 100 people and nobody's hearing about it, I don't even care about credit. Just a story to be able to tell. Like I feel like it's wasted. Sorry for the 100 people who survive or die in this case, but like they always talk about how a lot of criminals get caught after the fact. So like they're in jail for something else and they can't stop talking about the crimes they got away with. And so they keep bringing it up. And so there is a book, Astro City it's called, which I don't know if you've ever read.
Yeah, no, one of my favorite comics.
The stories are amazing. And they are everything from, like, there's one story about Samaritan. He's basically Astro City's version of Superman. And because he does everything so fast, can fly somewhere fast, can jump somewhere, save lives really fast. When he sleeps, the only thing he dreams about is being able to fly for long distances and enjoying it. So it's like stories like that. So there is one story.
Just to cut you off really quick, the Boys, the Amazon Prime series about superheroes, I had heard or read somewhere that it was loosely based, or at least the idea for it came from Astro City.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's not the same guy, but it wouldn't surprise me because, Astro City and Watchmen before it were like taking characters and flipping them around a little bit and giving them new names and slightly different things. So there's a story in there in one of the volumes. It's called The Junkman. It's actually volume 2, number 10. If anybody's interested, it's not worth anything. Get it for a couple bucks online. The story is about this guy who is a mastermind and does all these crimes and fully gets away with it. And while he's out on the beaches enjoying himself, it really bothers him that no one knows that he did these successful crimes. So the end of it is he does another crime that is similar and really botches it completely, intentionally. So he gets caught and he has his day in court. And so everybody knows that he did those other crimes. So that's how this question feels to me. Like, yes, it's important to save 100 people. It doesn't matter if you get the pat on the back or not, or if anybody knows. But the other side of it is if you save 100 people and you're not talking about it or nobody knows about it, it's a tree falls in the wood, right? Just with 100 people's lives at risk.
So on that note, I'll ask you the question. Have you ever saved someone's life?
I have. So yes and no, I guess, right? My son, when he was very young, my wife and I had very early on, new parents, nervous about everything. We took CPR classes because we're like, I want to know how to handle situations if they come up. My son was at the table and he was eating watermelon. And watermelon is one of the fruit, actually, that they talk about. It's a little bit dangerous for young kids because it can come off in big pieces. So he started choking on it and it wasn't getting any air. I quickly pulled him out of his seat, did the maneuver, turn him over the right way, give him the pats on the back for him to spit out the watermelon. So what was probably 10 or 15 seconds, but well enough. He was actually severely choking on it. So I did that. So in that essence, I did save his life. But the funny thing is like, so I was a wreck right afterwards. Like I was shaking, like the whole situation. I unlodged the watermelon out of his mouth. And so he had 2 pieces one in each hand that he was eating some of. I get the watermelon out, never let go of those 2 pieces. His throat gets cleared. He's fine. He's like, hey, watermelon. And he starts eating it again from his hand. So that's one where I did. And then we were on the boat. Lifesavers on the boat.
Come on.
Have you ever saved anybody?
Actually, a few times. I don't typically talk about them just because there's just never an opportunity where it comes up. But there's one that I will talk about because if my wife and I weren't where we were at this point in time, most assuredly this family would have probably perished. I used to have a Jeep. It was like a 2012 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, one of my favorite cars I've ever owned. In fact, I would buy this car again in the future if I ever had a ton of cash sitting around. It was just a fun car to drive. It was an off-road beast. We can just take it places that cars were just not meant to go. And so we used to go camping all the time. So we would drive in Arizona. There's this big swath of like 48,000 or million acres of land called the Superstition Mountains. And there's just plenty of places to go camping in. So I found a place where we can go. It's about a 4-mile hike to the camping spot, but you had to drive like 12 miles into the mountains, and you had to have a high clearance vehicle. You couldn't just drive there with like any old car, right? So we're driving down this road, and it gets to a point where it starts switchbacking up the mountain, and it's getting pretty steep. And we come around this corner, and then we're only like a half a mile from the trailhead and this 12-mile road, right? And we come up in one of these switchbacks, and I come around the corner, and there's a car sitting on its side, like the passenger side, like the driver is in the air. I can see the underbelly of the car, and it's sitting there, and it's kind of like teetering. And if it teeters one way, they're basically upside down on their head, and it's going to slide off the side of the slope. If it teeters the other way, there's a chance that it's going to slide anyways, but go off the other side. So I pull my Jeep around, and there's a family inside the car, and there's dogs. He's got 2 dogs, and they're running around, and one of his kids had managed to climb out of the car. So I walk up to the car. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, do you like, I don't know what to do. Like if I get out of the car's going to tip over. So it's my weight is basically holding this car where it is. So he's like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, I got a winch. Let me pull around you. I'll turn around and I'll hook you up. This way, if you slide, I can pull you, and at least you're not going to go anywhere. So I pull the Jeep around, and I hook him up, and I turn the winch on, and we were able to pull him up. And then the car finally like lands on the tire, and it starts to slide a little bit, but the Jeep weighs like, 8,000. It's a heavy Jeep, right? So, I mean, it's got a whole bunch of steel on it, and the car lands, and then, we're able to pull him a little bit, and it's like a Subaru, like, it's not even like an SUV. It's like, it was like the old, like the family truckster, but like the newer version of the family truckster. I'm like, what are you doing out here with this car? Like, there's 1,000 signs that say, high clearance vehicles only. You're in like a sedan. And I said, what happened? And he said, well, we started going up the switchback of the mountain, and then I just had no traction. So it just started sliding down, and I was about to go off the side. So I cut the wheels, and it kind of pushed me into the side of the mountain and then flipped the car over. And I'm like, dude, like, what were you going to do if we didn't come showing up? Because this was a remote trail 12 miles in. There wasn't a line of people going to this place to go camping. So, I mean, it was pretty much us and them. So had we not come when we did, there's a pretty good chance that, I don't know, something pretty nasty would have happened. But, we were, like I said, a half a mile from the trailhead. I'm like, do you guys want me to pull you up the rest of the way? And he's like, I'm just going to turn around and go home. I think we've had enough excitement for this weekend. But it was pretty
And then
crazy.
Did he tell you, let's never tell anybody about this? So you've saved 4 lives, but nobody knows about it?
Yeah, but his wife wasn't there. I'm sure if his wife knew, she'd be absolutely pissed that he put all their lives at risk.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's time for the joke vault, Michael.
All right. So this week is it's such an odd. So it's a one-liner, but when I read it today, it even caught me off guard because I'm like, what happened this day that I wrote this? So it says, do you ever wonder if Ronald McDonald was a communist? That's it.
That's it. Okay.
So I don't know what happened that day. Maybe McDonald's fucked up my order. I don't know why I came home and wrote that, but that's such an odd line to just write down.
Well, I gotta let's see if we can place that. It's got to be somewhere mid to late '80s, Cold War-ish, before the wall fell, and all that other good stuff.
And before Ronald McDonald went away, because they're not allowed to have him anymore because it's geared at kids.
Because he's a pedophile.
And I think the new movie It put Ronald McDonald to bed forever. I think. So yeah, it was just weird. Like, it makes no fucking sense to me. Like, how angry was I that day?
Well, at least now we've proven that you're not actually going off and writing new material and trying to slide it into the joke vault as funny stuff, because that was neither funny nor new.
Let me tell you, if I was writing new stuff now, it'd be killer.
So at some point in time, we're gonna we're transition the joke vault because you're gonna run out of material at some point.
Well, here's part of the problem. Yeah, here's part of the problem. So I look at some of them and I'm like, this isn't worth telling. This isn't worth telling.
Some of it is so bad, it's funny. Like it's just like, what the hell?
Again, it goes back to, it just shows being young and not experiencing many things and writing some of this stuff down. Next week, next episode. So
you always blame me for wanting to talk about next episode in this episode. So I'm not going to say a word. What are we talking about next episode?
So speaking of Ronald McDonald in the 80s or 90s. So the next episode, I want to talk about the late 80s, early 90s peep shows. And we'll talk about if you've ever been to one, if you did, how did you end up there? Why were you there? I have a story to tell about it that I think is pretty funny.
Right, I gotta
talk about it now.
I have to ask. Like, are you talking about like the peep shows where you like put a coin in and the window goes up and then there's a girl behind it? All right.
Yes. And it was, if I had to guess the year, I was maybe 21 or 22, and I went with some friends to it. But that's a story for next week.
Was it anywhere near Zona Norte?
No.
See episode 9 if you want to learn a little bit more about Zona Norte. Or is it episode 10? Damn it. We got to get better at this.
With that, I'm Michael Carter.
And I'm David Michael.
And we are
Ridiculously bored.